Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, there are so many options out there for our viewing entertainment. It's time to start thinking a little outside the box. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with, once more, as always. My name is Dave Hoyt, and I am the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brain on current projects, how they got started, state of the industry, and, well, any other fun stuff that we can think of. And if you'd love to keep listening and subscribe to this podcast, we certainly hope that you do. You can do that over at Apple. You can do it over at Spotify. And you can find every single one of our episodes archived over at our YouTube channel. Also, we'd love it if you'd follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at either In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of updates. And finally, and I dare say most importantly, please be so kind to visit us over at intheseats.ca, where our hard-working team is cracking away on movie news, reviews from festivals, and VOD and TV from all around the world. Because we like watching stuff, and we like telling you about it. So please come pay us a visit. I know our hard-working guys and girls will appreciate it very, very much. And I will, too. I am the editor and the boss, so that works, too. But on today's episode, let's get down to business. It's today's episode that we have to talk about right now. We are talking about a fun little web series that is streaming exclusively on the Alter platform, and it is called Paranormal Solutions Inc. A little bit of homegrown Canadian content, and it's a little weird, but it's almost like Ghostbusters meets a rom-com. It's like there's some fun stuff going on. It's about this group of six hapless but, passionate, ghost hunters who have had some success in their lives. They're trying to grow their business and become genuine players when it comes to dealing with all things supernatural. And what they find is, interesting because everything exists, from werewolves to aliens to krakens, and now they have to live up to their end of the bargain, which they've advertised that they can, or risk not getting paid, which would be tragic. It's a funny little series, and it really does highlight not only the breadth of quality stuff coming out of Canada, because this is some homegrown content, but also the options out there for web series, for streaming, for sort of alternative forms of entertainment. Because, as a movie, this may not have worked. As a TV series, this may not have worked. But as a web series with like 8-9-minute episodes and quick hits, it works pretty darn well. And I definitely recommend you check it out. And what we did is we got the chance to talk with the directors and creators, Michelle Ouellet and Nicholas Carella, who have been working in this industry for a while, writing, acting, directing, doing a whole bunch of stuff. And we picked their brain out of the series and just how they got started, and just how they keep it going, and just how opportunities like this really sort of can expand the options for content creators out there. And it's an interesting time, and I think these two are definitely sort of, I don't want to say at the forefront, that sounds pompous, but they're ahead of the curve, to say the least. And we had an interesting talk, and I hope you enjoy it. Well, obviously, thank you guys for the time today. I really appreciate this.
Oh, that's great. We're really happy to chat with you.
Now, I love the show. I got a kick out of it. I guess my first question is just walk me through sort of the inspiration for not only doing the show, but doing it sort of as a shorter series.
I'll talk about the inspiration of the show, then maybe talk about how we got the financing and stuff together, whatever. Sure. Well, first things first, like Michelle and I collaborate a lot on a lot of different things. We had just come off doing a film called After Party with David Milchard, was also in that film. And so, sorry, I just got an email while I was talking to you there, and I got to just turn that off. Sorry. So David,
Why don't you take the question again?
I can take the question from the
Yeah.
beginning.
What
Sure.
was your inspiration?
Yeah, rewind. There you go.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter.
It's fix it in post, it'll be fine.
That's okay. So anyway, yeah. So Michelle and I, as I just said, Michelle and I, and David had worked on a movie called After Party together, and then after doing that, we really all liked working together. And David had this idea of trying to do kind of like an update of Ghostbusters in a strange way, you know,
Right.
and we got chatting about it, and it started off as this idea of a show called Ghost Pals, which lended it to be much more silly. But then through conversations with David and then with Michelle, we decided to kind of go more for like kind of like the workplace comedy vibe, you know, like really trying to do something kind of like The Office or something like that, but just with people who happen to have this as their job. And I think what really unlocked a lot of it for us was the idea that, because we're like, well, are they ghost hunters? Are they like paranormal? Like, and then we like, well, what if they just believe in everything and have everything at your disposal? And so that sort of like was the kickoff point for that. So we wanted to do like a monster of a week show, sort of like a grown-up Scooby-Doo, with like kind of the vibe of like The Office kind of idea, or
Nice.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And yeah, and then it kind of went from there. And then when we were also discussing, we wanted to also have like the special effects and the visual effects be credible, but so that it would still, you know, satisfy those kind of viewers, you know, you know, those kind of things. And so then when we finally had some scripts together, we started trying to put some finance together.
Yeah, and so I mean, for that, I think like David was one of the the principals in a very successful YouTube show called Conversations with My 2-Year-Old. So he had done that, and that was more family friendly, not at all in this genre, but he had done that. And then we had done a little bit of work on the web as well. So I think for us, it felt doing something short form and doing something where we could kind of, there were no real, I guess we felt there were no real rules structure wise, if we went for a short form kind of web format. So I think that's what the main reason was. You know, we didn't have to worry about like other plot lines. We could just kind of really focus it on the monster, make them short, make them snappy. And so the web felt like a natural place. It didn't feel like a feature, and it didn't feel, you know, so yeah, I think that's kind of why we decided to keep it short form. And, you know, as independent filmmakers, as we all are, we wanted to just have that, you know, that independence and that freedom to just, do kind of what we wanted. We were lucky because the Independent Production Fund and TELUS came on board to help us with the financing and then the tax credits as well. So that's how we were able to get the show funded. But really and truly, like we produced it, they wrote it, we directed it, like, you know, everything we did, we were locations, craft services, you know, you name it, we did everything.
It was about as indie as it could get, you know, that in that way. Like we shot the whole thing in 16 days, and it was like pretty tough actually, but we did it.
I mean, that's the other thing that fascinates me, though, because, I mean, you know, for consumers on the outside looking in, they think, oh, you go pitch a TV show or you go pitch a movie. But there is this sort of vibrant other avenue for content creators to be able to put stuff on the web and to sort of have those markets. Because, I mean, and a lot of people just don't quite understand. I'm kind of curious from both of your perspectives, how does sort of that area not just allow for creativity, but allow for options as well?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it's a double-edged sword, because you can make whatever you want and put it out there, but then also it's swimming, you know, your work is swimming in a bunch of content.
Right.
So, you know, we were lucky with Alter now having, you know, picked it up, that it's, you know, we're finding like, it's great to be on a platform where people that like that kind of content are there. Because, you know, sometimes just putting it out on YouTube, sometimes things find an audience and sometimes they don't. And that's kind of, you know, I think it's interesting. I was gonna say, I think that's kind of the luck of the draw. And it's interesting too, because I think the YouTube logarithms change to YouTube.
Right.
So, you know, it feels like kind of a crapshoot in terms of getting being discovered, but it's great from a content creator perspective because you can just make something and put it up and hopefully people will find it and will like it.
I mean, I was gonna say, you touched on the alter aspect there, because this is technically a re-release, but it might as well be a release, because like already in the first 3 days, we have, on the first 2 episodes, we have way more views than we had on the entire series. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, this is like quite interesting about it. It does show you that putting, like, okay, when Michelle talked about the double-edged sword, it's like now you can make a show for anyone, but the things, you have to get it to the people who want your show. Like, and that's kind of where before, like you had 4 you had 4 major networks, whatever was on, you just chose one of the 4 and that's what you watched, right? Like, that's how life, oh my gosh, I get no phone calls and no emails.
I'm so sorry.
And you brought it out in me. Anyhow, sorry, this is a side note, and this could be a tidbit for anyone. We're in the middle of a renovation. My parents live upstairs now. And my dad has no concept whatsoever about like schedule. And I say, like, I have an interview, or I have an audition, or have what else kind of thing. And it's just like, it's 2 texts and a call every 5 minutes. But anyway, intergenerational living, man. This is the life. But anyway, going back to the idea of being able to get your content to the people who want to see it, that's sort of the most that's the most difficult thing, because you don't want to spend all this time, pour your soul into a project and then have no one see it. Like, that's the number, like, even beyond money, beyond anything like that, it's like you just want it not to be thrown into like an echo chamber, right? You really want people to see it. So I will say, though, we did try to design the show, even though it's like the monster of the week, and we basically only did the 8 plot lines to kind of to do this kind of thing. We
to keep it short and snappy.
Yeah, but in the back of our minds, like, we thought, what's a better proof of concept for it to be able to work as a television show, than shooting it. Turns out that's actually not the best way to make a television show. People don't generally. They don't have imaginations, like they don't, if you just add a B and C plot, this is a TV show, well, you don't even have to reshoot it, half of it, but no, they don't really, people don't really see it that way. It's not, that doesn't tend to be, other than in very few cases, the like way to get it onto TV. And this is fine.
Well, and I love how the show tries to go a little old school with its, like you say, the monster of the week kind of vibe. I mean, from your perspective, was that sort of the main drive going in, to not get too esoteric or too weird with it, just play it sort of right on that line between sort of the funny and the scary?
Yeah, well, we definitely planned it that way so that people could find the show at any episode. So that it would be like, so you still have enough, there's a definite payoff, and I think there's a lot of jokes and storylines that pay off if you watch the whole thing. But if you just picked up episode 5 or episode 4, you get a gist for the show. However, we definitely want it to be plausible so that things can stay in life. But I think, I'm not sure how much of the show you've seen, but this next week's release,
I'm halfway through, so I've seen half of what's coming up. So.
Okay, perfect. So you've seen the Leprechaun episode and the Sasquatch episode, and so did you get a little sillier?
It did, yeah.
It's some ways, and I'm a little bit guilty of being the guy who writes the sillier episodes, because to me, I'm just excited. To me, I'm excited about the endless opportunity that if you are looking at every sort of paranormal entity that exists. You kind of have an endless opportunity to pursue it in any way you want to, So we definitely want to try to keep the scares and do all that. Our only rule is it plausible? Is it, if you take for granted that the Sasquatch exists, is this storyline plausible? And that's basically our only rule there. But for Michelle, it was really important to make sure that you talked really early on when we were talking that, like, you didn't want it to be too campy, right? You wanted to still be able to pull off.
I wanted to ground the characters in reality
For sure.
and ground the even though the monsters are ridiculous, like, a leprechaun, but, I thought it was really funny that, it's infested a commercial kitchen and it gets, the leprechaun gets off the way you would kill a mouse, with a frying pan. So, we wanted to keep things, I mean, it's not realistic because they're, monsters, but, I wanted to kind of keep draw that line with the performances and with the tone of the show.
Okay. Very cool. Now, I mean, this is something I always like to ask because I'm always kind of curious about it. Like, what ultimately got you started and into the business and kind of wanting to be storytellers? Because sort of an add-on to that, like, I think of this show, and if you had tried to pitch this 10, 15 years ago, you wouldn't have even gotten in the door. It's like, oh, we're doing a horror comedy, but it's 10 minutes long, and there wasn't the device for that. But now with platforms like Alter, there is. I'm kind of curious, not only what got you into the business, but how these new platforms are forcing you guys to sort of adapt to how you do business.
It's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, I think with something like Alter, what's great, and they do a lot of horror shorts as well. I've been checking out their content, and what's awesome is I think that they give filmmakers a larger, platform. Like I can't think of a short form, something I've done short form, maybe even some of the features I've done that have had, 30,000 people watch it within the frame of 3 days type thing. I think, love the last feature that I did, but I think maybe 10,000 people saw it, 5,000. I don't know. It had a small Canadian theatrical release. So it is really cool that these platforms that are so targeted and that they are doing the work to find the people that like that content, and then they're bringing, our content to people who like it. And it's instead of, as we had said, kind of throwing it out there. And, I don't know. I started in the business, just wanting to tell stories, wanting to entertain people. I started in the theater, so I was always really loved performance and working with actors. That's really still still one of my favorite parts of the job. And in terms of independent, because I've done a lot of mostly independent work. And, for me, I love just working with new storytellers and fostering their voices and collaborating with them. And that's kind of what got me started.
I'll get into the how I got started first before I get into the platform thing. But I know I started writing. I guess I was always a creative person, but I was an actor. And one of the reasons why I started writing was because I was this 300-pound, 20-year-old guy who was asking his agent why he wasn't reading for lead roles, right? I'm really good. I don't know why I'm not reading for lead roles. And instead of him telling me dude, you're 300 pounds and maybe, not everybody wants to put those guys in leading roles, which is actually kind of an interesting way to say it. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I'll just write a movie that I'm the star of, and we'll take it from there. Because what he said to me was that no one's ever seen you in a lead role. So I'm like, okay, great. So I'll just play a lead role. And so the first movie I wrote was a movie called Hooked on Speed, and then through pure serendipity, actually you directed that film as well, yeah. It was me playing myself in a weird sort of meta documentary kind of idea about Scott Speedman, and we got picked up by E1, and kind of that's just how it goes, right? But it's weird because I realized that that maybe actually was a better fit for me than actually being an actor, was actually being a writer and stuff like that, even though I still am an actor. But the thing is that, it's I like to do all kinds of things. So, it's I find that if you're a creative person, you also have other hobbies too. You want to futz around the house and do the trim and do whatever. It's you're a creative person. That's just how life goes. Now, in terms of trying to curate your content for the different platforms now, I've personally found that the harder I try to make something fit for a platform, being oh wait, if we could just
the less it fits.
Yeah. We could do a series on IGTV. We could do a TikTok series. We could do whatever. Every time I'm trying to figure this kind of stuff out, it's quite honestly, I don't have that. I don't have that ability. I mean, I'm just not that innovative, but so some other people are to me, it's every time I write anything, I start out writing Lost in Translation, and then That's it. I'm just writing this like kind of like simple character feature, and then but I guess it's only 10 minutes long this time. I have a pretty good internal clock. I think that's about the only thing in terms of formats that I wish I was one of these trailblazers that was able to like really exploit the way the world works. But I buy stocks too late. I get everything in too late. This.
I hear you. TikTok terrifies me too. So
I don't know anything about that.
It's like, again, think about TikTok itself. Used to be like a karaoke like app or something like that.
Yeah,
and then someone within the company decided to pivot. I don't have that kind of foresight. I kind of feel like if you just write characters that people like or people care about, then I will say definitely, I'm sorry that I'm rambling a little bit here, but I'm definitely not the idea guy. Like in our collaborations with Sociable Films, Michelle's the idea person, and I am very much an execution kind of person where, you'll have an idea for like we have a television show right now in development with Sienna, and it's like, that was Michelle's concept. And then through conversation, I'm like, oh, this is how it's a show. I get how that's a show. So I'm really good at the launch guy. But I'm not really the guy who comes up with the idea, which is one of the reasons why I love the Monster of the Week thing too. I'm like, you give me the stupidest thing possible, I'll write a great episode about it. But I won't decide that maybe I won't go do the research about all the monsters in the world.
Now, can both of you think back to your younger days and think like, is there a movie or a play or a piece of work that was sort of your pivot moment to go, okay, I want to do this?
That's a really great question. I mean, I just mentioned Lost in Translation.
Yeah.
Now, that is my favorite film. That's like that for me. That's a perfect film. But I was already an actor when that happened. To be honest, I'm not sure if I had an influential work necessarily, but socially, I was beat up quite a bit as a kid, and the first place I flourished was like doing school plays and things like that. It's the first time I ever had any sort of like real affirmation. So that's what kind of got me into into the business. But then in terms of influences, like people who I'm more blown away by people like Charlie Kaufman, mainly because I feel like I could never, like, he for me creates like I see the limitations of my own abilities when I see someone like him. When I'm like, my brain could never do it. You could give me
I get it. Yeah.
1,000 years. So in terms of influences, let's just say, I don't know. I'm a Spielberg guy. Okay. Like, you just give me straight, good stories. That's it. That's what I can do.
I think for me, well, my favorite movie of like all time from when I was a child that I used to know off by heart was The Wizard of Oz. And I rewatched that in film school and I was like, still love it. And that was before I knew that I wanted to make films. I think I'd agree with you, Lost in Translation, I think. And I just rewatched that. And that movie, what I really love about that is she is so delicate with the character development. She takes 30 minutes to develop those characters. And you don't often see that in films. I find nowadays, we're right into it. I really, really love that movie. Love Amelie. That's a movie artistically and craft wise that I think is just perfect on every level. I'm trying to think of what else. I don't know. There's so many, but I think those would be my tops that I would go back to.
Now, I mean, in this, especially these days, given what the planet is going through, like, it feels like stories are more important than ever. And I'm kind of curious from your perspective, and not only for this, but going forward with other stuff that you develop, how do you sort of personally try to rise above the noise that's out there, especially like we've been saying, content-wise, there is a lot of noise. Like, is it just come down to sort of faith in story, faith in character? Like, for you guys, what is really the driving force of the stories that you try to tell?
Well, I think the first thing, when you talk about the world and where it's at right now, I actually think we're pandemic aside, we are at a really kind of great place in history, the only thing that's really influenced for me is really asking myself, whenever I come up with any I know I said I'm not the idea guy, but whenever we're chewing on any sort of idea, it's like you use this phrase, and I'm going to say it though. You have to really be conscious of how much space are you taking up, and why are you taking up that space? You know, that kind of situation. And so that's been one of the most reflective things for me personally. And even actually going through this show and like seeing some of the jokes that don't age that well and things like that, where I'm kind of like, yeesh, like, you know, like there's been a real time to be like, okay, well, maybe, you know, maybe I'm not the best person to tell the story and whatnot. But it's actually kind of interesting because you kind of like define your lane a little bit better too, where you're like, okay, well, you know, I'm good at telling love stories. I'm good at telling jokes and doing that sort of thing. And I don't need, and I can take up that space all I want. You know what I mean? And I think that's, so from a creative standpoint, that's definitely been, it's not limiting, actually. It's freeing, you know, to me.
Sure.
You know, because I think before, you know, you're trying to find ways to be interesting, where now it's like, you know, you don't have to. And to be honest, like I'm trying to think with all the TV shows I watched during this, you know, quarantine, like you know,
Such amazing
like I
content.
May Destroy You.
Oh my God.
Robbie,
Oh, yeah.
These are all
Unorthodox.
Feel
It's
Good.
great.
These
Feel
are all
Good,
these are
Feel
all
Good,
these are
yeah.
all shows that like are from worlds that I've never experienced. So it's actually been quite amazing to see what's come out of it. I think, you know, this, you know, I don't know if that really answers your question, but that's my.
No, it does. It does.
take.
It's been such an interesting time because we've had to slow down just a bit, but it's opened up sort of the avenues for personal curation so much more, and it allows stuff like you've mentioned. I think even your show to sort of squeak in and find an audience, and it's like you're right. It's an exciting time.
I'm not sure Alter would have even looked for our show or licensed our show or gone and put the efforts in to release the show had had people been able to shoot as much as they could. You know, like no one was shooting anything at the beginning of 2020, right? So suddenly you're like, how do we keep our content flowing if no one's shooting anything, right? You know, and it's kind of like it definitely created an opportunity for us.
We feel like we benefited from the industry being shut down for a bit.
I mean,
you know, because it was just this content that was there, and it was, you know, decent enough quality, and, you know, I think funny, and, you know, yeah, exactly.
And from their perspective, it's way cheaper than development. I don't want everyone to just start licensing whole things, right? but still, it's like at the end of the day, it's like it really breathed like for us. I know it's a little apropos, but every email we sent to all the cast and crew is like, back from the dead, we're fully resurrected. This is totally crazy, you know what I mean? Like, you know, and everyone's very excited. So actually, because I think as a whole, I think we all felt the show didn't get its due, and now hopefully it is.
And I hope so too. I mean, it really does feel like you guys are probably one of the more positive stories out of the sort of great democratization of content that we've been sort of living through for the past year. And I just want to say thank you again for the time, and congratulations again on the show.
Oh, thanks so much for talking to us. We really appreciate it.
It's really, I hope you can use half of the stuff I stuttered through.
Oh, it's a podcast. You're encouraged to ramble. Trust me, it's fine.
Okay, I get it.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Have a good one.
Bye, guys.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.